Hi, another of the big Oscar contenders I watched last weekend was West Side Story, Steven Spielberg's remake of the 1961 classic musical based on the stage production, based on Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, but transposed to mid 50s New York, with the Montagues and the Capulets instead being the Jets and the Sharks, two rival gangs, one of American born white teenagers, the other of Puerto Rican immigrants. And it's a musical. I had very low expectations for this. The original is, I probably wouldn't use the word masterpiece, but it is very good, and it was probably the best film of the year, and it was indeed the Best Picture Oscar winner of the year. This is a film that doesn't seem to have any real reason to exist. It doesn't do anything particularly original or daring with the material in the way that remakes, particularly of beloved classics, ought to. It doesn't do anything different or challenging or try to change things up. Some of the songs are resequenced, apparently to bring it closer to the running order of the original stage production. Unlike the original film this time, all the actors are doing their own singing, and all the sharks and all the Puerto Rican characters are played by Latinx or part Latinx actors, which is, of course, a very laudable but basic step forward. And there's also a supporting character named Anybody's, who in the stage and original productions is a female tomboy. In this version, is explicitly a gender non-conforming type, although whether or not the character is non-binary or transgender is deliberately left vague. Um, a non-binary actor was cast, which is good, but again, it kind of feels, well, you have to do that. You couldn't not do that now, and quite rightly. But it seems like, wanting credit for, you know doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. As for the cast, um, no one is terrible, but Ansel Elgort as Tony, the romantic lead, is kind of a great big just shop window dummy and not a very good actor. Rachel Zegler as Maria, in her first screen role, generally doesn't have much to do in terms of sort of emotional weight. It's all quite superficial. There's no depth to her performance, except in the very last scene. And if you've seen the original, you know the scene I mean. It's a scene that requires real anger and passion and command of the screen. And that's when she really delivers. But she doesn't get enough to do in the rest of the movie to actually make it a great performance. It's a great 3 minutes right at the end of the film, but it's small potatoes, really, compared to everything else we've already had. Ariana DeBose plays, I've forgotten the character's name, Maria's sister in law, um, and is engaging. She's hailed as a major new star. She's good actor, good singer. Hard to say much beyond that because there's just not there's not enough meat there. I think the overall problem with the film is that it's very much rooted in the material of the 50s. This is a film whose basic elements haven't changed in the 60 years since it was previously produced. And at that time, the idea of shooting a musical out on the streets of New York, outdoors, um, away from sound stages, was totally fresh and new and revolutionary. And the film really breathed new life into the musical just at a time when it was starting to fade away. However, if you do that now, 60 years later, it just looks old fashioned and old hat. This isn't even the first Hispanic themed New York set musical filmed on location in New York we've had in the last 6 months, because we also had Lin Manuel Miranda's In the Heights, which was also a flop. Um, it's a well made film. The performances are generally fine. The singing's good. Um, but again, the songs just feel very old fashioned. It would have benefited from being in some way updated and having some kind of risk taken with the production. Everything is done in the most digestible form possible, and it really just feels like textbook Oscar bait, which makes it all the weirder that it's a remake of a 60-year-old Best Picture winner. I don't understand the point of this film existing other than Steven Spielberg wants to do it, and apparently what he says goes, regardless of how bad his ideas are. This is the third film of his in a row that I felt has had real problems. The Post was Spielberg by numbers Oscar movie, and it was fine, but and it was about a major story that was the kind of thing that deserves to have a movie made about it, and as far as I'm aware, hadn't previously. But it was just all a bit by the numbers. Then we had Ready Player One, which is unwatchable and one of the worst films of the last decade. And then we have this, which is not bad as such. It's just totally redundant. Why would you need a new version of West Side Story when it's superficially, or even, there is no major difference between it and the 60s version? So, although it's fine as a film in its own right, there's really no way in which it exceeds what the original did, apart from taking account of changes in social requirements in casting, which is what it should be doing because it's 2021. And of course, you cast Latinx characters as Latinx with Latinx actors. And if you have a non-gender conforming character, then you cast a non-gender conforming actor. Of course, you do that. Why wouldn't you? And so, what's the point in the movie? So, I wouldn't recommend this. I would recommend the original because it's pretty good, even though it has dated in some ways, but it's a product of its time, and you can see it as a product of its time. And the new one is also a product of the early 60s because it hasn't changed since then.